Both my husband 44M and I 40F are having an affair. Kindly excuse the errors, English is not my first language. We have been married for 6 years, and things were fairly good for the first 4 years. Then my husband's father expired and it sent him into depression. I tried my best to be there for him, and even arranged for a therapist, but he refused to go and said that he can manage it by himself. I tried to convince him, but he still didn't agree, so I never brought it up again because I didn't want to push him. We also tried for a child, but I ended up having a miscarriage. I could see that he became a little distant since then, but when I brought it up, he told me that he had a lot on his mind and it had nothing to do with me and asked me to give him some time and space. I agreed because I knew he was going through a lot mentally. I thought that everything will be fine after some time, and I was very much wrong. We ended up drifting apart even more, and whenever I would bring it up to him, he would turn it into a fight despite my attempts to keep things calm. I could see that he was still suffering, and this time I even tried to force him to get professional help or try couples therapy, but he kept on refusing and brushing it off as a waste of money and time. This was followed by him being cold towards me 24/7. He had been such a loving husband, but now it seemed as if he was a completely different person. I knew he was in a very bad place mentally, but I had tried my best to make him happy and help him heal. I don't think I did enough, and I felt like it knowing that I failed him. I got used to his cold behavior after a while. I stopped trying to make him go to therapy and just gave up. I remember feeling exhausted of it all, and I also remember feeling bad because he was probably going through so much more, but I simply had no energy to chase after him. I didn't know what to do, so I just sucked it up. We started to live like roommates. Quarantine wasn't as bad as I had expected. Luckily neither of us lost our jobs, and by God's grace we made it through without getting infected. Around beginning of this year, I was finally called to work at the office, and I realized how relieved I felt after spending some time away from my husband. That's when I met Jordan, fake name, who was new in the office. He is the same age as my husband, and has 2 daughters with his ex-wife. They got divorced a few years ago. At first I thought that he looked very serious and intimidating, so I avoided interacting with him, but after a few conversations I realized that he was the complete opposite. He turned out to be such a sweetheart when I got to know him. Conversations with him were so effortless, and every time I talked to him, I just felt this weird giddy feeling that I couldn't explain. Instead of dreading going to office, now I was eager to go every day because I knew I'd see him there. We bonded over a lot of things, helped each other out a lot, and got very close within a month or 2. It came to the point where I finally admitted to myself that I had very strong feelings for Jordan, and to me it seemed that I wasn't the only one. Even though there was a lot of tension in the air, neither of us made a move. I didn't do it because I felt too scared to have an extramarital affair, and he didn't do it because he knew I was already married to someone else. Then I had this massive fight with my husband about a personal issue. It was bad, probably the worst fight we've ever had. My husband ended up leaving in the middle of the night and he didn't return for a whole day. I ended up having a mental breakdown in front of Jordan because of all this, and I basically spilled everything to him. How my marriage had become a shell of what it had been and how my husband was a stranger now. I couldn't keep it in, I had too many pent-up emotions. Jordan consoled me and it felt so good to have somebody to talk to, even though he couldn't fix my problem, I realized that just venting to someone who cares feels kind of good. Jordan and I got closer, my husband and I completely stopped talking. I ended up confessing my feelings for Jordan after a while, and he did admit to having feelings, but he told me that he couldn't be in a relationship with a married woman. He told me that he'll always be there for me, but he didn't want to make things physical till the time I was still married. I agreed. It has been months now, probably the best few months in my life after what feels like a decade. Yesterday, I found out about my husband's affair. One of his co-workers contacted me through Facebook, and she told me that my husband has been sleeping with somebody he works with. I thanked the kind lady, and when I put down my phone, I remember feeling nothing. I didn't feel sad, I didn't feel betrayed. I felt normal, as if it was none of my business. But I still needed some kind of confirmation, so I searched in his computer for evidence. It took me a lot of time, but I finally found tons of pictures of his very naked stress. She had even clicked selfies of them in bed together, and I'm not going to lie, it hurt to see his face besides hers. It took me back to the days when we were happy together, but they felt like a dream with a man I didn't recognize anymore. My marriage felt like a dream that never happened. When he came home yesterday night, I had wanted to say something, anything, so I asked him how his day was. He told me it was fine in a normal tone, which surprised me because I was expecting him to talk like he always does these days, coldly. I felt even more surprised when he asked me about my day as well. I told him it was fine. We had a few conversations throughout the night, about needs and bills, but I had wanted to say so much more. I don't know why, but I didn't. I felt sad for a while, but it went away soon enough. I realized how happy Jordan made me, and how this marriage is completely ruined. I don't feel guilty for cheating on him, and I don't feel sad because he's cheating on me. I just have this heavy weight on my chest that I want to remove. There's no point living like this, but I don't know how to bring any of this up. This isn't the first time I have wanted a divorce. Earlier, when I asked him, some months back, I had told my mother that I want a divorce, but she said that my home was where my husband was and that I should try to make him happy. I told her that I had tried everything and it was all useless, but she said that divorce is not an option and I should just try getting pregnant and everything will be back to normal after a child. She's not going to support me if I divorce my husband. My relatives are of no use either, if only they're worse. Other than this, I can't bring myself to ask him about his affair. A part of me just wants to keep things the way they are, but it isn't fair to Jordan. I know that I want to be with him, but suddenly, I'm feeling afraid. What if something goes wrong? What if my husband doesn't agree? What if things get even more complicated? What if my husband does something to me when he finds out I'm cheating on him? What if my mother disowns me? I just have a feeling that something will go terribly wrong. How do I bring this up in a way that ends well for both of us? What is the best way to break it to him? Do I have someone in the house to keep things calm when I tell him? How do I convince my mother that this is for the best? TLD on: my husband drifted apart after his father's death and my miscarriage. He refused to go to therapy, things got worse day by day, he became distant and cold. I met another man, Jordan, and developed feelings. I started an emotional affair with Jordan, found out my husband is sleeping with someone else. I want a divorce, but everyone seems to be against it. I'm confused and conflicted. Redditor's reactions. Redditor 1, there is no marriage to speak of. A divorce will just make it official. Redditor 2, he didn't agree and told me that a divorce is extremely unnecessary. One person can decide this for themselves. It does not need an agreement. Gather all the evidence you can from the computer. Pictures, emails, anything that will document his infidelity, because he has nothing similar on you. Even in a no-fault divorce, having infidelity evidence gives you a lever. Contact a lawyer immediately and then follow their advice. Do not make a move until you have received that legal advice. Go from there. It may be that it's in your interests to distance yourself physically from him, before you arrange a meeting, and announce you're divorcing him. It may not. The lawyer will advise you. Whatever happens, contacting a lawyer is the very first thing you should do.